He was standing up there in his glass office, sipping coffee like every other morning when it happened when he saw her. Down on the factory floor, a young woman was lifting steel beams like they were part of her body. And then he froze because through the mesh of her yellow vest, he saw it, that little crescent birthmark, the same one he used to kiss goodnight on his missing daughter more than 2 decades ago. The cup slipped from his hands and shattered on the floor. That was the moment his empire, his carefully built walls, all began to crack. Her name was Amara Johnson. 26 years old, worn hands from a decade of hard labor, but eyes that still carried fight. She lived with her grandmother in a cramped apartment on Detroit's east side. Every morning started at 4:30, pulling on steel-toed boots, whispering a promise to the woman who raised her that she'd keep pushing forward. She had an engineering mind, a heart too proud to accept pity, and she'd learned to survive being underestimated. And right there in the plant, the foreman, Rick Coleman, decided to humiliate her. College girl thinks she can weld like the men. He sneered loud enough for everyone to hear. She squared her shoulders, said calm but firm, "I have the highest quality ratings in this department." He spat, called her affirmative action princess, and sent her to clean floors. That's when the man in the suit walked down the stairs. Victor Morelli, billionaire builder boss of the whole operation. He locked eyes with her, and it was like staring into a mirror from another life. He fired the foreman on the spot, but in his fury he slipped and said words that made every worker freeze. "You don't talk to my daughter like that." The factory went quiet. Amara blinked, confused. Angry daughter? He covered fast, ordered a private meeting, but the damage was done. She wasn't about to be treated like charity. 1 hour, she said, then I'm going back to work. In his office, he laid out photos, reports, missing person files that had gathered dust for 23 years. His daughter Leona had vanished with her mother after a bitter separation. No leads ever panned out, just empty birthdays and a preserved nursery in a mansion that echoed like a tomb. And now here was Amara, same age Leona would be, same birth date, same mark on her shoulder. She crossed her arms, demanded proof, demanded truth. He promised it. A DNA test, neutral ground, results go to both of us. Against every instinct to run, she agreed. At the university lab, they swabbed their cheeks. 6 hours until results. So they walked to a quiet cafe. He asked about her mother, the woman who raised her. Amara's voice softened as she spoke about Rachel Johnson. Strong, protective, working 3 jobs. Teaching her dignity wasn't about money, but how you treated people. Victor's eyes filled. That was exactly the woman he'd fallen in love with before he lost her. And then his phone buzzed. A message from a blocked number. "We know you found her. Keep her buried." The past wasn't finished with him. Years ago, Victor had taken dirty money to build his empire. When federal prosecutors came for the mob family he'd been tied to, he flipped, testified, and barely escaped. He thought the danger had died with prison sentences and sealed files. He was wrong. Rachel hadn't just left him for neglect. She ran because she knew vengeance was coming. That night, Amara read her late mother's journal, pages filled with birthday notes and prayers. In one entry, her mother wrote, "I would rather break his heart than bury our daughter." Amara felt the world tilt. All those years she thought she'd been abandoned, she'd actually been protected. But the journal also carried another truth. Her mother never stopped calling her Luna, never stopped writing about the father she'd left behind. When the DNA results came back, 99.97% match, Victor could barely breathe. "You are my daughter," he whispered. Amara's chest burned. She wasn't ready for the name Luna, not yet. She had lived her whole life as Amara Johnson. She wasn't about to throw that away. "Don't call me that," she said. "I'm still me." But the threats escalated fast. Black SUVs outside the lab. A message on Victor's phone. Family reunion won't last long. They rushed to her grandmother's apartment, but the lights were out. Her grandmother missing. Another message came through, impossible because their phones had no power. Come inside alone or Pearl dies. Upstairs waiting was Antonio Marino. Scarred and bitter brother of the mob boss, Victor's testimony had destroyed. 20 years he'd been hiding, waiting, sharpening his revenge. And now he had leverage. Amara's grandmother bound to a chair, 3 armed men, and a contract demanding Victor sign over half his company. "You ruined my family," Antonio said, his voice like gravel. "Now you watch yours burn." Amara stepped forward, steady as steel. "I was 3 years old when all that happened. She raised me alone. I'm not your enemy." Antonio sneered, waved pruning shears at Pearl's trembling hands. "Your father made you my enemy the day he betrayed mine. It should have ended right there in blood and fire." But something shifted. Pearl, 78 years old, swung a cast-iron skillet straight into a guard's knee. Guns clattered, chaos erupted. Victor pulled his pistol, dropped another man. Amara smashed a lamp base to cut Pearl free. Bullets cracked walls, sparks from shattered wiring rained like fireflies. And over the noise, Victor roared, "You assumed I'd choose empire over family again. Not this time." Antonio shouted orders, desperate to regain control. But the room had already turned. Victor and Amara moved as one father and daughter, finally together, forcing the standoff into a new direction. The gunman hesitated, the leverage slipping. For the first time, Antonio realized he'd miscalculated. Victor wasn't the same man he was 20 years ago. He was a father first now, and that changed everything. The fight didn't end clean, not that night, not with one burst of gunfire or a single victory. But something had shifted permanently. Amara knew the truth of her bloodline, and Victor knew the cost of his mistakes. They weren't suddenly a family, not yet, but they'd faced death side by side, and that was a start. Outside the apartment, sirens wailed. Inside, amid broken glass and splintered wood, they held on to each other like survivors of a storm. And that's where I'll leave you. A daughter raised into poverty, a father buried in wealth. And the question that still hangs in the air is blood enough to heal 23 years of silence? Or do the lies that protect us cut deeper than the truths that hurt? Tell me in the comments, what would you choose to uncover the truth, no matter how painful, or to keep living in the safety of a lie? Because sometimes, family is the most dangerous secret of all.